مساء الخير.
Good evening.
في الأزمات
In crises,
يمكنك
you can
التمييز
distinguish
بين
between
من
those
يقف
who
مع
stand with your
القضايا
issues,
وبين من
stand
يخاف
against you, or
أو
those who
يعادي
take a neutral
أو
position.
يقف على الحيل.
Of course, the
طبعاً
East has been in conflict for a
المشرق
long time,
مهزوم
in conflict with
ومنذ
Israel, in
زمان
conflict with
بعيد
ignorance, in
مهزوم
conflict with infighting,
بإسرائيل
and with its
بالتخلف
relationship with the West.
وبالفرقة
But because of
وبالعلاقة مع الغرب.
generalization, and generalization can be a killer,
جراء
we
التعميم
fail to distinguish among
والتعميم
the different
دائماً
spiritual
فتاك.
entities in the West.
لم نميز في
Despite
كثير
their
من
presence
الأحيان
in
في
the Middle East,
علاقاتنا
we
مع
fail to
مكونات
distinguish
وهمية
between
الغرب
those who stand for
رغم
what's
وجود
right
حضور
and
لها
those
في
who stand
المشرق
for what's wrong.
بين من يقف مع الحق
The Evangelical
وبين من
Lutheran
يساند
Church in the
الباطل.
world is made of about
الكنيسة
70
الإنجيلية
million
اللوثرية في
people,
العالم تعد
and in the
حوالي
United
70 مليون
States,
شخص.
nearly
وفي
8
الولايات
million.
المتحدة تقارب 8 ملايين.
I will not speak
لا
about
نتكلم
that
عن
large
هذه
group,
المجموعة الكبيرة
but will
ولكن
try,
سنحاول في
through
هذا
this
الحوار
direct
المباشر
dialogue with Bishop
مع
Elizabeth Eaton,
المطران الأسقف
the president of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America,
رئيسة
to talk about the role and work
الأنموس
that this church has done and is doing
والأعمال التي قامت وتقوم
in
بها
its
هذه
position
الكنيسة
of what's happening in
وموافقها
our
لما
East,
يحدث
on this
في
land,
مشرقنا
and in particular
في هذه
in
الأرض
Palestine,
وتحديداً
Iraq, and
في
Syria.
فلسطين والعراق وسوريا.
Bishop Eaton
سيادة الأسقف
will
إيتون
come to
أهلاً
the
بك في
bells
إجراس
of the
المشرق.
East.
بما أن هذا المشرق ملتهب
Now that the East is
ويغلي
boiling over what's happening in
وتحت وطأة ما
Gaza,
يحدث في غزة،
how do you
كيف
look at the
تنظرون إلى
situation?
الأمر؟ حتى الآن لدينا
So far, there are
حوالي
2,000
2000
martyrs
و10,000 جريح،
and 10,000
بينهم
wounded,
أكثر من
among them more
450
than
طفلاً
450 children
قتيلاً
killed,
شهيداً في غزة.
martyrs
أنتم
in
كيف
Gaza.
تنظرون إلى الأمر؟
How do you see the situation?
Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity to be on your television network. We're very troubled by the situation throughout the Levant, in particular with our relationship with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land. We have a sense that we're experiencing from a distance some of the pain that those brothers and sisters are feeling. So we pray constantly here for peace, that there could be a peaceful solution, which will have to include a two-state solution. There must be a viable, contiguous Palestinian state and a secure Israel. I think that will bring about lasting peace. But we're very, very troubled by this. And we have responded already with medical aid.
نعم أسقف إيتون
Yes, Bishop Eden.
طلبت
Your church asked to stop what's happening in Gaza. On what basis?
ما يحصل في غزة.
You say
على
peace
أي أساس؟
between two
يعني
parties,
تقولين سلام
Palestinians and Israelis.
بين
But if there's no
يعني
clear
ما بين
solution,
الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين.
every 2 years we face this Israeli
إذا
aggression
لم يكن
against
هناك حل
Palestinians,
واضح، يعني نحن كل سنتين
especially in
أمام
Gaza.
هذه الهجمة الإسرائيلية
Every
على
year or
الفلسطينيين
two,
في غزة
thousands
وغير
are
غزة،
killed,
ولكن في غزة
injured,
تحديداً.
handicapped,
هذه الهجمة
people in
كل سنة
mourning,
كل سنتين
kids.
آلاف القتلى الجرحى
How is it possible?
المعطوبين
Who has dialogue with who while people are being killed?
بأي
How is
ذريعة؟
it possible
كيف
to get to
يمكن
peace?
من يتحاور
What
مع
peace?
من في ظل هذا القتل كي يمكن أن نصل إلى سلام ما؟ أي سلام؟
Well, certainly continuing the armed conflict is not going to bring peace. You mentioned the attacks by the State of Israel upon Gaza, and they would mention the indiscriminate rocket fire into civilian populations from Gaza. Neither one of those actions is going to bring lasting peace. We have to come and see each other as fellow human beings. All three of our religious traditions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, hold that God created all of us, and He holds each one of us as precious, and each life is sacred. And until we're able to see one another as a brother or a sister, as a human being who has the same hopes and dreams for our children, then the armed conflict will likely continue, and the armed conflict will only bring more death and destruction. We need a negotiated solution.
يعني أنتم أيضا ككنيسة
Yes, Bishop. You as a church took a stand against settlements, the principle of Israeli settlements. Does anyone listen to you? Does anyone in Israel listen to you about your stand on settlements, for example?
I can't speak directly to that. I know that we are contacting the Congress, the President, and saying that the illegal settlements must stop. We're hoping that people are listening to us. I'm not sure that the government of Israel is listening to the United States when we ask for these settlements to be stopped. But we have to keep trying. We can't just throw up our hands and say we're going to give up. We are a church of hope. And our hope is that, God willing, and through the power of God, that somehow we will begin to understand that the only way to live together in peace is to see each other as being fully human, and agree on a negotiated solution for a two-state solution where Israel is secure and Palestinians have their own state.
نعم، وأيضا أنتم في الكنيسة اللوثرية الإنجيلية
In the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America,
دعم القروض
you refuse to support loans to the State of Israel until the settlements stop.
ما زالت سياسة الاستيطان قائمة كما
But as you know, the settlement policy still exists. There is
يعني
systematic destruction of infrastructure,
التحتية
especially
الذي يحصل
agricultural
حالياً
land.
للإراضي الزراعية. ماذا يمكن
What can you do as a church to stop supporting any policy that goes towards settlements?
لوقف دعم أي سياسة تذهب إلى الاستيطان؟
Well, one thing that we are doing that is a positive response is to engage in aid to the Levant, particularly our partners in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land. I think my government we've urged our government not to engage in grants to the state of Israel while the settlements are going on. However, in the meantime, people still need medical aid. Children still need food. Students still need scholarships so that they can study. And our church has been active in this since 2012. In fact, we've already given over $3 million US dollars in aid to the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land to accomplish all of those things. And just this week, we sent $100,000 US dollars to the Augusta Victoria Hospital in Jerusalem to send medical teams down to Gaza to help the people down there. So I can't speak for, I'm not a diplomat. I can't speak for my government, but our church believes that this sort of positive engagement and our own people engaging in positive investment in the Palestinian state, that's the way for us to go forward.
نعم يعني سيادة الأسقف أنت تعلمين أنه في العالم
Bishop
في
Eaton,
العالم كله وفي المشرق
you know
بالتحديد
that around the world, especially in the East, anything you do is influenced by politics.
أو عباءة السياسة. يعني
Even when you
حتى
present
عندما
money
تقدمون
to the oppressed in Palestine,
هذه الأموال
some will consider
للناس
that politics.
المظلومين في فلسطين سيعتبروها
But I want to
سياسة.
ask
ولكن أنا
you,
أريد أن أسألك هل ما
do you
زلتم
still
مثلاً
refuse to buy products made in settlements?
ترفضون شراء المواد المنتجة في المستوطنات؟
We have not engaged in divestment, boycotts, or sanctions. But what we urge our people to do is to engage in positive investment, investing in products from the Palestinian state.
نعم يعني الاستثمار يعني أنتم
You said that there are investments that you're trying to push toward investment to strengthen the Palestinian economy and the fabric of Palestine.
هذه المشاريع برأيكم
Are these projects enough?
هل نحن بحاجة إلى
Do
دعم
we need a
أكبر
greater international
لجعل
support
هذا
to make the
الاقتصاد
Palestinian economy,
اقتصاد هؤلاء الناس المحاصرين
the economy of those people
يؤدي
under
إلى
siege,
نوع من
lead to a minimal
القليل
social
من
welfare
الرفاهية
in
الاجتماعية
Palestine?
في فلسطين؟
Bishop?
سيادة الأسقف.
Well, certainly, I think strengthening the economy of the Palestinian state would be very helpful. I can't speak for other nations in the world, but it is the work of our church to do what we can to strengthen our brothers and sisters there. That's a positive way to engage with this. And if people have some sense that they have a future, I think there's less tendency to resort to violence. We also support that the blockade of Gaza be lifted. And certainly there'll have to be security measures in place for the state of Israel, but that the blockade be lifted. How can 2 million people be bottled up where there's no economy and no hope and no future? Certainly people will become frustrated and angry. So yes, ending the blockade would be helpful, and engaging in positive economic measures to strengthen the economy in Palestine, I think would also be a step forward.
نعم هذه الدعوة سيادة الأسقف إلى
This invitation,
المبادرات
Bishop, to
الاقتصادية
undertake economic
قمتم بها
initiatives
عبر التشاور مع
in partnership with the
الكنيسة
Evangelical Lutheran
اللوثرية
Church
في الأردن
in Jordan and the
وفلسطين
Holy Land
لمحاولة
to try to buy
شراء
Palestinian products.
بضائع فلسطينية.
How does
كيف
that
يتم
work?
الأمر؟
Do you tell your church partners in America and in the West to follow this initiative to strengthen the economy of Palestinian groups under occupation?
We can encourage our people. I don't have sort of blanket legislative authority over the members of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, but we can encourage our people to purchase products from the Palestinian Authority. And we have a philosophy of accompaniment. When we work with our companions in that region, we take our cue from Bishop Munib Yunan and the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land, and they help us to see where positive investment will be most helpful to them. We're seeing this at a distance. They live that reality, so we depend upon them to give us guidance.
Have you withdrawn investment in Israel?
Have we divested? No, we have not.
إذن سيدتي اسمحوا لنا أعزائي أن نتوقف مع فاصل ثم نعود معا لمتابعة هذا الحوار مع رئيسة الكنيسة الإنجيلية اللوثرية في الولايات المتحدة الأسقف إليزابيث إيتون بعد الفاصل. أهلا بكم مجددا في أجراس المشرق. سيادة الأسقف إيتون، اسمحي لي أن أستغل حضورك النادر
Bishop Eaton,
على الشاشات.
allow me to take advantage of your rare presence on the screens in the Arab world
نتكلم عن أوضاع المنطقة
in order to talk about the situation of the entire region from your point of view in the West. People in our region have confusion about the role of churches in the West. I will move to Iraq, if you allow me. What was happening in Iraq since 2003? The American invasion led to the migration of 1.4 million Christians. Now, since ISIS entered Mosul and then the Nineveh Valley, we're facing a situation with more than 100,000 Christian refugees in addition to other minorities. As a church, I don't want to talk about politics, but how do you see the situation?
Well, it's certainly very grave. I had a chance yesterday to speak with Bishop Kawak of the Syriac Orthodox Church, and he was explaining some of the situation for the Christians in that region. It's very serious. We realize, though, that ISIS does not represent Islam, and that this is not something that faithful Muslims could support. So what we try to do now through the Syriac Orthodox Church is to give them as much aid as we can, and we have been doing this to work not only with Christians, but with all people who are suffering dislocation, with the internally displaced people. We're working very closely with the Lutheran World Federation, the Zatari refugee camp in Jordan. However we can help with this sort of aid, medical aid, food, scholarship aid, work with children in the camps and in these areas. That's what we're trying to do, and we call upon all people of goodwill, all faithful people, to reject the kind of extremism that's being demonstrated. I think one of the problems right now, maybe not just in your part of the world, but across the world, is that the voices of extremism are drowning out the voices of moderation. And so those of us who call for peace, who pray for peace, and who work for peace, I think we need to raise and join our voices together.
نعم، يعني أريد أن أبقى سيادة الأسقف في موضوع ما يحصل الآن في شمال العراق.
I want to stay on what's happening in northern Iraq. The Iraqi Christians, the Yazidis, Shiite Muslims, and even some Sunni Muslims are being killed and terrorized. You said that this does not represent Islam. How can the churches push political leaders to save those people from the sword of slaughter?
أن تدفع باتجاه أن تدفع السلطات السياسية لتخليص هؤلاء الناس من سيف الذبح.
Well, certainly, I'm sure in your country, as in ours, we regularly contact those in government, and I think that both in our governments, the government is trying to do something to bring some relief, but ours is not, we're not part of the diplomatic corps. As citizens, yes, we can speak out, and as a church, we can say that this disproportionate infliction of suffering on religious minorities in northern Iraq is shameful, and I'm sure that it just grieves God to see this happening. That's how we can respond. I cannot direct the President of the United States, and neither can my church, to take any sort of diplomatic action, though we do urge that there be some relief given to these people.
لفتني اليوم سيادة الأسقف أن قداسة البابا يعني
What stood out for me today, that the Pope is calm and content with words of prayer for what's happening in Iraq. Praying is great for believers, but can prayer alone save these people?
It's essential. Is it sufficient? Only God, I think, working through human agency, can bring about a solution to a situation as complicated as we're seeing in the Levant right now. So prayer is sufficient. It's something that we must be about unceasingly, all of us together.
France, through its foreign minister, or even its interior minister, said that they can receive Iraqi Christians in France and some other Western countries, as you know, that try to pick some Christian. Specifically, you are in contact with the Orthodox Church, as you said. You are in contact with Bishop Kawak and tell them to move their countries. Is the forced migration of Christians the solution? If Christians are displaced, what remains of this crucial component of our society in the East?
Well, I can't speak about the government of France. I know we have no intention of luring Christians away from their homeland. In fact, our belief is that Arab Christianity is essential to that region. There must be a living, viable Christian presence in the land where Christianity was born. So we do not lure people away, but we're hoping by supporting people through humanitarian aid and also praying and hoping and working toward a negotiated solution for a two-state solution, that might make it possible for people to see that there is a future for Christians in that region.
سيادة الأسقف، أنتم ككنائس يعني هل يمكن أن
Bishop,
تشرحي للجمهور العربي
you as churches, can you explain to the Arab public the confusion about what many people in the Arab world say, that Christians in the East fall under the umbrella of and are in good relationship with Western countries? How can churches in the West support the survival of Christians in the East?
كيف يمكنكم دعم بقاء المسيحيين المشرقيين في المشرق؟
We're able to do that mostly with our partnership with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land. We do that also through the Lutheran World Federation. We have a strong presence on the Mount of Olives, where the Augusta Victoria Hospital is. And we also engage not only in a positive investment, we also engage in selective purchasing. So we not only try to trade with the Palestinian Authority, but we do not purchase products made in the illegal Israeli settlements. We also work with the ELCA there with scholarships for students. There's schools there for children, and it's an interesting thing to note that half of the children are Muslim and half are Christian in these schools, so that they can be educated. We also support, through the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land, a college there on the West Bank in Bethlehem. In fact, all of these things are work that we do to make it possible for the people of Palestine to feel that they have a future in their own land.
سيادة الأسقف سأعود إلى العراق على يعني وهو جزء
Bishop Eaton,
الآن يحصل فيه
let me go back
شيء
to Iraq.
مخيف يعني لم يحصل عبر
What's
التاريخ.
happening there is a scary thing. It has never happened in history.
يعني كما رأينا
Your church,
تشاركون
as we
كنائس
see,
أخرى، يعني غير موجودين
partners
في
with
العراق.
churches,
أنتم موجودون في
you're not in
الأردن
Iraq,
وفلسطين. ولكن من الواضح
but
أن
you have
لكم
churches
أيدي
in Jordan and Palestine.
بيضاء أيدي بيضاء في العمل في المنطقة.
But it's clear that you do good work in the area.
ذهبوا إلى الجبال
Those who
ومات
went to
أطفالهم
mountains
عطشاً في شمال العراق.
and their kids died
وهؤلاء
of thirst
الذين
in northern
هجروا من
Iraq,
المسيحيين من
or those
سهل
Christians who were
إلى
displaced from
كردستان
northern
العراق.
Iraq to Kurdistan.
كيف
How can
يمكن
you
أن
support
يقدم
them?
لهم العون؟ هل يمكن أن
Can churches
يتعاون
cooperate to
الكنائس في
provide
الغرب على
humanitarian
على
and social
إقامة
help to people
رأي عام
so that they are
رأي
not
عام
displaced
في الغرب
and they can stay in their land?
الإنسانية والاجتماعية لهؤلاء الناس كي لا يهجروا وكي يبقوا في أرضهم.
It already, this news has already come to the West. We're fully aware of it here. I can't speak about Europe or Canada, but in our country, we know what's happening there. It's reported daily. It's an atrocity. Sadly, you say this is something that has never been seen in the history of the world. Sadly, that's not true. When we go astray as human beings, when we forget who made us, in whose image we are created, in the image of God, then very often we engage in this sectarian violence that it is, at this point, I would call this an obscenity against humanity, what's happening there. But no, we're raising our voices and we're fully aware of this in the West.
نعم سيادة الأسقف البارحة قالت
A Yazidi parliament member in Iraq told us during an interview on this channel that she wanted to migrate.
على قناة الميادين
Is there anyone who wants to receive them
تريد أن تهاجر. هل فعلا
or who
هناك
wants them to
من
migrate?
يريد استقبال أو يريد لهؤلاء الناس أن يهاجروا؟
I can't speak for the Yazidis. We have no plan in our church here, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, to lure people here. If people come to the United States and if they are granted asylum or refugee status, then our people will do what we can to welcome them. But it would be hoped that this centuries-old people would not have to leave their land. So we're hoping that the governments and praying that the governments of the world would find some way to stop the bloodshed and bring relief to these people.
نعم سيادة الأسقف أنا فعلا لا أسألك
Bishop, I do not ask you as an American citizen. I ask you as a human being, because the church is a human entity. Yesterday and today, the U.S. administration has been bombing ISIS. But it didn't do anything when Christians were displaced. How do you talk from a humanitarian basis to the U.S. administration?
Certainly through prayer, and with our advocacy efforts with our government, we try to bring that to their attention, and it is something that's noted by our government. It's not. I think it's been a more gradual process that has sped up this migration of Christians. So that's we want the Christians to stay there. I might ask, though, what can be done by people of goodwill in the Levant to make it a more hospitable place for Christians to live and function and flourish.
Bishop, do you count only on good intentions, or do we need strong, determined wills?
Strong wills, but not violence.
نعم. اسمح لي أيضا أن أتوقف مع فاصل ثم أعود إلى الحوار. أعزائي انتظرونا بعد الفاصل، سنعود إلى حوار الأسقف إليزابيث أيتون رئيسة الكنيسة الإنجيلية اللوثرية في أمريكا. أهلا بكم أعزائي من جديد في أجراس المشرق في حوار مع الأسقف إليزابيث أيتون.
We're back with Bishop Eaton, the Bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.
الأسقف سأنتقل إلى
I will turn to the situation in Syria, the situation of Christians in Syria, if you allow me. You're one of 21 Christian leaders who presented a letter to the President of the United States demanding a clear and strong strategy to stop what's happening in Syria, specifically through a political solution. What was the response of the President of the United States? And what was the response of the administration in general?
I believe that there's still that our government behind the scenes or in some other channels that are which I'm not aware, is working to try to bring some sort of a resolution. We hope we can send these letters, and in fact we do engage and urge all of our members to contact their senators, their congresspeople, the president, and press them to work for a peaceful solution in the area. But I've not seen yet the response from the president.
أنت تعلمين سيادة الأسقف أن الحل السياسي
Bishop Eaton, as you know, you asked for a political solution in Syria. A political solution needs two parties, and the two conflicting parties need to believe in a political solution. If one, for example, ISIS, is killing people in Iraq, crucifying people, they just crucified a Christian in Raqqa. The Nusra Front is killing people, and both parties are on the international terrorism list, and it's an accredited list in the US. What political solution is possible between a political party and a party that uses killing as a tactic?
That's certainly a question that countries are facing around the world. It's something that we've had to wrestle with in our country, which was brought painfully to our attention when dealing with al-Qaeda, particularly after September 11th, 2001. That's part of the reality, but it's not just two sides. There are many sides to all of this. And so just countering that with military force doesn't seem to be as effective as trying to get people together to have conversations together. And maybe we'll have to form unusual alliances, people who are not naturally considered to be allies, maybe in the name of humanity and in the name of the hope that we have together in God, saying we must put aside our differences in order that we can together come and reason with people who don't really want to have any sense of reason. But it is possible to have conversations. We used to be enemies with many people with whom now we are allies. But the people have to speak up. That's another thing. It's not just the government who's going to get this. Individuals have to say to neighbors, this is an unacceptable way to behave and to live, and this does not represent the best of our religious traditions.
Only religious values, or religious, social, and humanitarian?
I would say that the best of social and humanitarian values come from the best of religious values. That's what motivates me and the people in my church to give humanitarian aid, which we are actively providing to the Palestinian Authority, to the people in Gaza, to Syria, and around the world. We're motivated because we believe that God loves each person completely and utterly, and we are to show that love by reaching out and helping other people. So our humanitarian aid and our social action is based on our understanding of the love we've experienced through Christ.
You gave material support to humanitarian cause in Syria. Can you explain to us who do you provide this support to? To whom? And how does it get distributed?
We work with the Syriac Orthodox Church, with His Holiness Patriarch Ephraim, with Bishop Kawak, and we channel our funding through them, and they then get the aid where it needs to go in Syria. And we also work with the Lutheran World Federation at the Al-Zatari refugee camp in Jordan. Over $1 million of support there already for the people there, including food aid and clothing, and working with the children in that camp.
أنا قرأت رسالة
I read a letter that you sent to the Patriarch of the Syriac Orthodox Church, Ephraim Karim. As you know, the Syriacs are threatened. They are threatened in northern Iraq, in Syria. Are you pursuing a partnership with this ancient church?
We do have a partnership with them already. We have had a chance to have them come to, Bishop Kawak was able to come to our church in our country, and we work as closely, and I had a chance to speak with him on the phone yesterday. So any way that we can be of assistance to that church, the Syriac Orthodox, we're seeking to do.
Do you carefully study where the aid to the camps is going? Who is it going to? Does it go to those who deserve it?
Yes. The Lutheran World Federation has a pretty stellar record when providing humanitarian relief. They monitor where that's going, and we're confident that in the camp in Jordan, and also the aid that we're channeling through the Syriac Orthodox Church, that it is being used to help people.
Bishop Eaton, the displaced and refugees have many needs. Even though churches in the world send support, they cannot cover the needs of hundreds of thousands or even millions of refugees who need care, food, and medical attention. In your opinion, is the solution for international Christian lobby to encourage countries to stop the arming, which will end the displacement of people?
I think we, through the Lutheran World Federation, have asked the governments around the world to stop the arms trade. So that is one way that we do work together, yes. I think in Europe this is happening. I know we have a concern from our partner churches in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. They're monitoring this as well. And so, yes, we are, as a Christian community, saying that this needs to stop. The violence will not bring an answer or a solution to what's happening in the Levant or anywhere where people are engaging in armed conflict. It'll just escalate that. Beyond that, though, in our church, we've issued an appeal to the members of our church for increased funding for the Augusta Victoria Hospital and the relief work that's being done, medical relief work that's being done in Gaza. So we've already engaged in that just this past week.
دائما يسعى المسيحيون تسعى الكنائس المسيحية للحوار وأنتم.
How can interfaith dialogue happen in a practical sense
كيف يمكن
in areas of religious extremism?
سيادة الأسقف
Who should have the dialogue? How can you elect religious leaders who are willing to have this dialogue
كيف يمكن أن ينتخب قادة
and have
دينيين
an effect on the
لإدارة
people?
حوار هؤلاء القادة الدينيون لديهم تأثير على الناس.
We are having those dialogues. That happens in our country on a regular basis. Knowing that I was going to be a guest on this program, I reached out to our Jewish colleagues and organizations here, as well as the Islamic Society of North America, so that we together could see how we could bring a word of hope to your region. We are one of the members of the Peace Research Institute of Oslo, which has been engaging in about a 9-year process. Pardon me?
أنا أقول أن هذا أمر مستحب أن يقوم القادة.
We would be honored.
ببث رسائل.
We welcome religious leaders to send messages that can unite people.
We could work on that. We have very strong ties with the Muslim community and with the Jewish community in this country. And we hope that we can model for people in your region how it's possible with people with deeply felt held religious convictions can nevertheless work together and live together in peace. So I'll talk to our Jewish colleagues and our Muslim colleagues to see if we could bring a word of hope to your region. And I think that also Bishop Munib Yunan of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land has been very engaged in trying to convene the voices of all the religious leaders to talk about peace and to talk about a just and lasting solution to the two-state solution in Israel and Palestine.
في ظل هذا الغليان في ظل هذا الصخب الكبير.
In light of this big noise in the East, through your experience trying to bring people together, how would we protect the rights of small religious minorities? How? What's the best method?
One thing that we're doing in our country is providing protection for religious minorities. Muslims and Jews have roughly the same number of members of their religious traditions in our country, but they're the minority religions. And after 2010, when there was such a rise in something I would call Islamophobia in our country, we, along with other religious people from all traditions, not just the Christian tradition, started something called Shoulder to Shoulder, which was designed specifically to stand with Muslim citizens, Muslims in our country, and say that we do not support hatred or acts of violence perpetrated against you. We see you as fully members of this country, and we want to stand with you. That's one way we've tried to address that in this country, and I know that this is happening in small ways in Israel and in Palestine. I was struck immediately after the tragedy of the 3 Israeli boys being kidnapped and murdered, and then the horrific murder of the Palestinian boy, that the parents of those children got together. Maybe that's an action to be taken. We know that worked in Northern Ireland when the mothers said, enough is enough, the killing has got to stop, and Catholic and Protestant mothers worked together. We've seen this in Liberia, where the women knelt every day across from the government house saying the violence in this civil war must stop. Maybe that's the action that has to be taken, that we see each other fully as fully human and say, we want this to stop.
نعم. كيف فعلا ترين سيادة الأسقف مستقبل
How do you see the future of the Middle East, the whole Arab region? You know that Christians are located in this area and in Egypt. How do you see specifically in your church the future of the region and the presence of Christians?
Clearly the future is in God's hand. But in the meantime, we will work with our partners there, prayerfully, listening to what they need and what their experience is, understanding their context, offering support, financial support, any sort of humanitarian aid that we can. Their region is an incredibly rich region, culturally, historically, wonderful peoples there who have a deep tie to the land, people of 3 religions, 3 majority religions, all of which claim to be worshiping a God of peace. If we can move toward that, there will be a future there. But with God, there is always a future.
I want to thank you, Bishop Elizabeth Eaton, for your presence on this show, on this network, and the picture you painted. Some will find it hard to be reasonable while bullets are flying above your head. Maybe during massacres, people can't think logically, and their feelings take over. But there's no way to escape deep thinking about the crisis and our relationships, and deciding what's best for our land. Thank you again, Bishop Eaton, for your presence with us. Thank you to those who worked on this show. Thank you for watching. Peace be with you.